everybody. Welcome to Taurus Tech Talk. I'm Robert Parsons. I got my counterpart, Corey Church, here with us today. And joining us on the show, we have Mr. Michael Hooper with Biamp, and we have Mr. Clayton Mills with Highway Marketing.
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so Clayton he's on the show for the second time.
I'm a veteran.
Veteran, yeah.
A veteran.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 times as a veteran in this show already.
Yeah, I mean, with 9 episodes out there, yeah, I think that works.
And Mr. Hooper is the rookie for today.
That's right.
So we're going to give him the hardest time. We'll make all the questions and banter the most difficult for him.
Right. He's hoping to be MVP by the end of the hour.
Nice. Okay. So why don't we start with Mike, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your role at Biamp?
At Biamp, I'm a regional sales manager. My territory is North Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. I'm basically their point of contact for all sales, technical, whatever it might need to be in that area.
Great. And so do you get to interface with customers and us in the Pro AV reseller market?
So I do interface a lot with end users and integrators alike. I also target specific consultants in the area, but Biamp is growing and changing now, so we have a lot more people added to the team, and they have very specific roles. So we do have new consultant-only people and new enterprise account-only people, but with the relationships that we've formed over the years, we still try to maintain those as well.
So I noticed you said North Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. I just got to say, I mean, North Texas, it's awesome. And you get a whole other states, but you just get us here in North Texas.
Well, North Texas is the size of a state. Let's be clear.
I think that's debatable. But I mean, I live in Texas, so I don't want you to get the wrong impression.
Have you ever looked at a map? Rhode Island is probably the size of DFW.
Man, if I was good at anything in school, it was geography.
So whenever I say North Texas, do you think I mean just what we in the DFW area call North Texas?
I feel like
I should say Northern Texas, because it's more or less everything north.
Let's say like Waxahachie and up.
Yeah, sure.
Waxahachie.
Waxahachie. Why would you say Waxahachie? That's such a weird city.
It's the first town I came to.
Waco.
Because it's south of Dallas.
Like
Waco. I mean, that's
like
borderline central
line.
Texas. I don't know about that.
Okay.
How'd you not
You
get
gotta draw
Austin?
the line somewhere, you know?
I'm not cool enough to have Austin.
You
would
fit in
debatable.
Austin.
He's saying you don't fit in Dallas. Just kidding.
So for those that didn't get to watch the first podcast with Clayton, tell us a little bit about your role at Highway Marketing.
Sure, I'm a sales manager over a territory of North Texas for highway marketing, and I call on the integrators and consultants in the area on behalf of the 11 manufacturers we represent right now. So including Shure, Allen Heath, QSC, Listen Technologies, K&M, et cetera, et cetera.
Very cool.
I think I listed all of them last time, or tried to at least.
That's fine. They can look you up.
And sometimes it changes, so we get that.
It recently changed, and it's changing again soon. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's news to us. So, and in case the viewers don't already know, we've brought 2 what we think are the brightest minds in Pro AV audio. I don't know why you already started laughing. I was going to say it with a straight face. No, seriously. I mean, we depend a lot on both of these guys to help us as integrators ensure that we're doing right by the customer, that we're doing right by ourselves. And so we thought it'd be great to have them on. We're going to talk a little bit about the technologies that they're both very familiar with, and maybe give you a little education on what's happening in the market and what you're going to be seeing in the future. So before we get into all of that,
Well, hold on. Let's not miss a step that we've done in our recent podcasts.
okay. All right.
Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself. What outside of the Pro AV world are you into? What is something that the listeners might not know anything about?
I'm into torturing myself.
What?
You're going to have to explain that further. That's not this kind of podcast.
I do triathlons and long-distance endurance events, so a lot of Ironman training.
How long have you been doing that?
I've only been doing it for about 2.5 years, maybe.
Okay, so what made you get the idea, this is something that I want to start doing?
It was kind of twofold. My wife started making me run because she decided we're going to run a 5K, and I couldn't run. Running is the worst. It still is. But she said, we're going to do this, and we signed up for one. It was called the Donut Dash, and we We were like,
Sounds like a good one to start with.
well, okay, so I
Donuts
talked
at the
her
end.
into the idea of, okay, we'll sign up for this, but we're just going to do the 1 mile fun run and just see how it goes. Well, we went down the 1 mile fun run route and missed the turnaround. So we ended up doing the whole 5K. So that was my first 5K, and it was miserable. And I hated
It was probably best
And I
that you
had
made
to
that
walk
mistake.
a whole bunch of it. And at the end, they gave us beer and donuts, and it was like 8 in the morning. So I was like, well, this is actually a fun sport. So I look at my brother-in-law, who has also been training and doing Ironman and triathlon competitions for a long time. And I was like, well, if he can do it, I ought to be able to do it, because we grew up, or we swam together in high school. So I've got a swimming background, and I've always been fond of bicycling. Turns out I'm not actually very good at it, but if you're mediocre at swimming, biking, and running, then you're a triathlete. So that's what I do.
I'll have
I've
to
seen
keep
some of your
that in
times
mind.
on Facebook. You've done really good times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
You just recently finished an event, like last weekend?
Last weekend, I was at Nationals. I did well enough this past year at a couple races to qualify, and you can probably still see on my arm. I have they give us these temporary tattoos. I don't know if you can see it there, and they don't come off at all.
Yeah, actually, yesterday when I saw you, I thought something was wrong with
Well,
you.
it probably has to go through a lot. I mean, you're swimming, you're biking, you're sweating, so I get that.
Sunscreen.
It's like a henna tattoo.
Yes, it is on there, and most triathletes, they'll like shave, because every second counts, and I don't, so it gets caught up into like all of your hair and everything. So yeah, you should.
So how did you do in your most recent event?
2 hours and 5 minutes for an Olympic distance triathlon. Okay,
okay.
Good. I did very, very good.
Good.
Yeah?
Not well enough to represent Team USA at Worlds, but I am going to be representing Team USA at Worlds for off-road triathlon.
That's
in
cool, man.
Almere, Netherlands in 2020.
Wow.
That's incredible.
So apparently
Wow,
I'm
we've
better
had
at
gold
mountain biking.
record artists in here, and now we have a USA team member. Wow. If you're not listening to this podcast, you're doing it wrong. So, Clayton, tell us something about yourself that we don't know.
Let's see. What did I say last time? Play
Well,
music,
you told us a little bit about how you got into the business, which was
yeah,
a pretty
so,
intriguing story.
Motorcycles. That's been my latest hobby that I got into a few years ago.
On or off road?
On road.
On road?
Yep. So I like to ride on the weekends and sometimes in the evenings and get away from life for a little while, and just on the, no phone calls, no text messages, right?
Does it bother you riding a bike, wearing all of those clothes in 103-degree heat?
It is when you stop. So the trick is to try to keep going. If you're going 70 miles an hour, they say the temperature is about 20 degrees less than what it really is outside. So if I'm doing 70 down the interstate and it's 100 degrees outside, it feels like 80 to me, or to a rider.
But once you stop, I used to ride motorcycles, believe it or not. But once you stop at a stoplight and you're surrounded by cars,
And
you're basically in an
cooking.
oven.
You're cooking, yeah.
You're in an oven. You're going to die.
There's a motor between your legs as well. So
I mean, if you've ever seen anybody split traffic, like split lanes in
Yeah.
traffic, it's not because they're trying to get there faster. It's
try to
because
stay
they
cool.
don't want to cook.
Well, that
They're
sounds like
not-
a good excuse for the police officer when they finally get pulled over.
Well, it's legal.
What's the intrigue behind that? Is this kind of being alone to your thoughts? What?
Yeah, a little bit of that. It's a good way to get away from what we all do every day, all day long, running around, keeping up with the business and such, to go ride out in the country on a weekend, go up to Arkansas, ride some of the hill trails up there on the roads. You're out in nature. And, one thing when you're riding a motorcycle in nature is a little bit different than being in a car is you have all the smells and senses of being outside
Yeah.
as well.
Do you listen to music as you're driving?
I do sometimes.
Nice.
Bluetooth.
Do you ever get on I'm totally ignorant to this, but do you ever get on radio to other bikers or areas in the?
Me and my girlfriend have a communicator, so we can talk while we're riding.
Wow.
Which is kind of
That's where you-
handy.
I don't know
That's
that
where
I'd
you
want
messed
that.
up.
I hope
Yeah.
my wife doesn't watch this one, but I wouldn't want to be riding a bike and then still be talking to her at the same time.
It's pretty nice though, Hey, we should pull over pretty soon.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
Got
I
it.
use the bathroom, or whatever.
Keep the chatter to a minimum, please.
I'm
We're going to go radio silent for the next 2 hours.
I was at a gas station filling up filling up my truck the other day, and there was a motorcyclist who pulled in who was listening to the radio as he pulled in to the pump next to me. And it, like the dash with speakers and a radio and all of that stuff. And it's the first time in my entire life that I've heard a biker on a Harley pull up to a gas pump playing Nirvana. It's always like Waylon Jennings or
Leonard Skinner,
or something from the 70s and 80s.
I heard a guy. I was walking through Walmart parking lot, and a guy was coming through, and it was Huey Lewis.
Oh, nice.
Nirvana, though. I mean, that's me. That's my age.
That's unfortunately where we're going, buddy.
If I rode a Harley, that's what I would be listening to.
Yeah, that's where we're going.
I probably will not be participating in any triathlons anytime soon, though.
When
You would be surprised at some of the Ironman.
The participants, or
Oh yeah, because you don't have to qualify to sign up for an Ironman.
You just have to be brave enough to.
Well,
Can they have
Get out there.
spectators just sit on the side and enjoy
endurance
the?
spectating? My wife is amazing at this event. Endurance spectating is her gold medal. She will watch me race for
Does she like
13
heckle
hours straight.
people?
I would hope that she absolutely heckles everybody. She makes signs that say, keep going, or smile if you peed on the
So does she
swim.
come to like all the different stopping points, get in a car and drive to the next spot, or she go back to the hotel room, take a nap?
He's debating his answer.
Little of column A, little of column B. She does show up quite a bit, but I do imagine that it's kind of hard for her to sit around and wait for a couple hours, and then, there goes Michael. Okay.
for 30 seconds.
Yeah. And then she won't see me again for another couple hours. And then, there I go again, just running by. But I will say, some people, they sign up for an event, and their only goal is to finish. So kudos to
That
them.
would be me
That's
for the
admirable.
first time trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just finish, though. I wanted to
To place, win. Yeah.
put in a good time. I knew I wasn't going to podium or anything on a lot of the events that I enter.
The very best time that I have running is on a treadmill watching an hour-long show on my iPad.
Yeah, running for an
Man,
hour
I'm
is
really
hard.
good then.
That's hardcore, though.
I'm really good then. We could turn on a little bit of Succession. I don't know if you've seen that show on HBO. We're not plugging HBO, just to be fair.
I feel like I'm too clumsy to do that because I'll catch like the wire or something if I'm not Bluetooth, and like smash everything goes
You're
flying.
not Bluetooth?
Yeah, what are we? We're technology experts, man. Wires?
What
are you
year
kidding
is it?
me?
Hold on.
I have Bluetooth.
that on the bingo
but
card?
I keep the Bluetooth for whenever I'm just running outside. If I'm running inside, might as well
Yeah,
not kill
it's
those
wires.
batteries.
Let's do it.
Just plug that thing in, right?
The other fun thing that we're doing today is a fantastic idea. We're doing bingo. So when you watch this, you're gonna hear some type of ding or notification that we're all challenging each other. Basically, whoever wins at bingo today and has all of these words said is the best here at the show. I'm just laying it out there.
The winner.
It has nothing
Yeah,
to
you're
do
the
with
best.
pure luck
You
or
won
anything.
the show.
On the show.
You won the podcast.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive into some subjects. Some of the main points that we want to talk about today is around audio technology, obviously, and communications of those audio technologies. And a lot of you have probably heard about these digital-based communications. They've been out for a while, and I think it's just going to saturate the market. It's going to be definitely something that everybody should be educated on. So we're going to start with AVB. AVB is a term, and we're going to let Mr. Hooper define that for us. So what exactly is AVB?
Okay, so AVB is not a communication protocol. It is a subset of IEEE standards.
Where is AVB?
That define.
Yeah, I apologize. Hold on. I apologize to all of the viewers who might watch this on YouTube. We're going to be looking down, marking this stuff.
This is
because-
competition.
I'm not even listening to actually what he's saying. I'm just listening for
Yeah.
the words.
So we're
As long as you're listening, we're going to
right.
We're sorry if this is terrible because we are far too competitive.
All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Hooper. IEEE, I think, is where you left off at.
Yes.
IEEE set of standards, and you can go Google it, and it'll come up with a web page that's beautiful and will tell you all about 802.1BA, which is the umbrella term, and then a couple other letters after that define. Thank you. That define what the technology really has to be able to do. So it's more or less like a cake recipe versus you're buying a cake. You're just getting a recipe.
Okay.
So
So IEEE, well, why don't you just elaborate on that? Because you mentioned that as a term. I don't think a lot of our viewers will understand what that means.
IEEE, from what I understand, and I will say I am not the expert at all, is a governing body. Yes, is a governing body that basically defines what the standards are, that what you must be able to do or how you must be able to do this thing.
Okay.
It's international, and it applies to pretty much everyone using networks, even the internet too. Correct?
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
mean, they kind of oversee everything.
Yeah,
So-
you guys, as far as I know, it like you said, it's a governing body. They handle network protocols, video and audio protocols. They handle exchanges on the network. They're an overall governing body for a lot of things. So you'll hear oftentimes people will go, "Well, it's an IEEE standard."
Stamp of approval.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go around and start saying that. Tonight, I'm supposed to cook. And my wife is going to be like, well, why don't you do it this way? Hey, this is IEEE standard. So
No, in that scenario, you would go, well, this is how the USDA approves me to do this work.
we've known each other way too long, and she's going to totally just knock that to the wayside. So the cake recipe, AVB, that technology is built into products that allow for these communication and how these products intertwine with one another. You can't take an AVB piece and communicate with a Dante piece.
That is correct. The communication protocol for Dante is different than what AVB is. AVB is interoperable with other AVB chipsets or cards that have been more or less given the stamp of approval from the Avenue Alliance, AVNU, Avenue.
Catchy.
Yes, I know. And Biamp is a member of that alliance. They're not like a founding board member or anything like that. Those would be Cisco and Harman and a couple others.
Is AVB abbreviated for what?
AVB is abbreviated for audio video bridging. And whenever we say AVB, it's relevant to us because we're in the AV world. AVB is so much more than just the AV world, though. It's time-sensitive networking outside of us. So if you're in the automotive manufacturing industry, you know it as TSN. Cisco, for a while, I believe, was calling it DE, or Deterministic Ethernet. And it's just because nobody's really given it that catchy name.
Gotcha.
At Biamp, we just call it AV for Biamp or AV Bliss. But yes, it stands for audio video bridging.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So let's look at the opposite side of that, or not really the opposite side, but just another technology, Dante.
Sure.
So define Dante for us.
So Dante is a standard for what has been audio over network, but they have recently introduced a video card that can be licensed and developed. We can talk about that a little bit more, but it is actually the property of a company called Audinate. They started creating this in the mid-2000s, I believe. They developed their own protocol, and they license the chipsets to any manufacturer who would like to pay them for them. They've now recently also introduced a software option where manufacturers can license it through software. But it's a protocol that establishes a set of communication between audio devices currently, with open discovery between everything. So one of the ideas behind the Dante products is that when they're all in the network, they'll auto-discover each other and they auto-elect a clock. So it's supposed to be very plug-and-play compatible over standard network protocols and standard switches that you would find in the IT industry that are commonplace. Where it differs from AVB is that AVB is a open standard, which anyone can go look up the rules of how to be IEEE compliant and work with it. Dante is not. It is has to be licensed from Audinate. So,
Gotcha.
So with Dante, is Dante a lot like HD-based where you have to buy the chipset from a specific manufacturer?
Audinate sells the chipsets to the manufacturers. The manufacturers put that in their products. So when you buy something that has Dante on it, that manufacturer is already implemented the chipset, or soon to be software in some cases, and they've already developed it to work with their product, so it meets the standards and firmware versions that are up to date with all the other Dante products on the market.
So did they come up with a name by just jumbling up the letters in Audinate, or did they read Don Quixote and decide that they wanted something cool like
just
that?
like everything, like Avenue, right? They had to come up with something catchy, so they said, let's think of something that has digital audio, networking, transport over Ethernet. Hey, Dante. People know that word, so I guess that's what they did. I can only assume.
Okay.
It's a catchy name.
It is. People
like
remember it.
AVB is equally as catchy. So that's a
Agreed.
big difference, though, between AVB as a standard and Dante is basically a licensed product.
Correct.
So, I guess I knew that. I just didn't really compare the two as that relates. So there really is no comparison other than the fact that they both have some level of audio transport capability.
That is true.
Yep, and different characteristics of what they do and how they do it, but they both transport lots of channels over the network, uncompressed with low latency.
So from my perspective, Dante seems to be the current, I don't want to say leader, but essentially the manufacturer of that.
It's most adopted platform.
Yeah, most adopted. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
There's over 300 and something manufacturers now, and I think close to 2,000 products that have Dante in them.
Right.
And what's interesting, too, is a lot of manufacturers, Biamp included, and some others that have a different protocol will include Dante options in their products as an edge network so that you can make that translation between,
Right.
the two different products. They can get other sources into their ecosystem.
Why do you think that is?
We have a lot of love for Dante at Biamp. We are one of the world leaders in Dante,
Right.
actually. I will say why I think that is. You guys can agree or disagree with me if you want. But going back to the cake analogy, AVB is a recipe, and Dante is a cake. Do you want to buy the cake, or do you want to make your own from a recipe? It's so much easier just to go buy the cake and put the chipset in your product, and now guess what? You're a networked media device.
Yeah,
You don't have to develop the AVB technology and chipsets and hire a bunch of really smart computer networking engineers to develop this for you and meet all of these standards, and then get your device tested, because to get the Avenue Alliance certification stamp of approval, you've got to go through and get testing. I mean, it's hard for us to get our own devices stamped for AVB
Absolutely.
certification.
Yeah, the path to creating a Dante product is much quicker for a manufacturer. They can turn that
That
pretty
makes a lot of
quickly.
sense, actually. Especially coming from companies who make products for a living. Like, what's fastest to market and will still get the job done. So, Biamp has probably selected AVB on some of their products not because it was the easier path, but because they thought it was a superior method in doing that work.
So one of the stories that I like to tell about why we've selected AVB is simply because of what our backbone used to be for Audia. AudiaFlex was our big chassis. I know I see you getting ready to write it because you know what I'm about to talk
Know where
about.
this is going.
But with
Robert's gonna
Audia,
copy.
I feel like I'm killing it over here.
the backbone was CobraNet. And we depended upon CobraNet for our device-to-device communication and device-to-other-device communications. I had a complete CobraNet system at the AT&T Performing Arts Center because we had AudiaFlex DSPs and we had Rankis-Hine line arrays. And they both happened to have the CobraNet chipsets in them, and so we used a program called Disco, or CobraNet Discovery, to
Another
more or
catchy
less,
name.
yeah, Disco, right? To route all of our audio across the network, and it worked great at the time. That was about the time that Peak Audio, who developed CobraNet, sold it to Sirius Logic, and about that time was when they were promising CobraNet 1000, which was 1 gig CobraNet. And I don't know what happened. I don't want to speculate, but Peak Audio, or Sirius Logic, I'm sorry, never developed CobraNet 1000.
It just kinda
And
died.
It kind of died. Now, CobraNet is still very prevalent in the industry. It's just not where we see it a lot. We interact with it probably all the time. Any airport you go to, all of the paging, all of the Robert Parsons get on your plane, it's about to leave sort of gate paging versus full, the the white zone is for parking or for loading and unloading. Those pages are all done over Kubernetes systems. They're typically done with IED. They seem to be the leader in airports. At Biamp, we have a product called Vocia that we tend to do the same thing, but it also operates on a Kubernetes backbone, and it's really great. Because the technology is very stable, it's not going anywhere. It hasn't changed in the last decade. It is what it is. But here's the thing. When AudioFlex was trying to grow and expand, the technology stopped. And we were at the mercy of another company. And we didn't want that to happen again, so we chose to use an open standard for our technology backbone to communicate to all of our own devices. So we chose AVB.
Okay. Staying on the subject of AVB, we've got a bullet point here that I think is very interesting. And it asks the question, is AVB traffic Unicast or Multicast?
Oh, that is a great question. Yes, I'm going to write that down too.
Sorry, bingo.
To understand-
Take a second
Bingo
out of
break.
our
Before I
podcast.
answer that, I really do kind of want to establish what Unicast and Multicast is.
Sure.
First of all, so Unicast. If I was going to Unicast my message to you guys, think of it if I was going to write an email. I would be writing an email to Clayton, to Robert, to Corey, and you can see how that might take a little bit more of my resources, me being like the sender or the switch or whatever it might be. And if it's a high bandwidth or has a lot of content to it, so say it's like a full 4K video that I'm, writing or whatever and sending out, that's going to be very taxing on me. That's Unicast. That's why Unicast is, good and bad. I'm only sending one stream to the actual listener or to the end device. Multicast, on the other hand, is I draft this email and then I send it and I just carbon copy all of you guys. So everybody gets it.
That's a good analogy.
Whether you want it
That's
or
an
not.
amazing analogy. Can we
It's
stop?
probably the better way I've heard it explained before.
That's
Everybody uses email, so it's. I just came up with that too. I should write that
you
down.
really need to write that down. That
Now, the other thing is with that, you guys all get these carbon copy emails, and you don't necessarily want them because they're
No.
not addressed to you or it doesn't pertain to you, but you just got it. So imagine that, and then imagine, there's like 5 of me, or, there's 3 other people that are all sending these multicast carbon copy emails to everybody on the network. Well, now it's starting to flood everybody's time because you're getting these emails from not only me, but Michael Hooper 2 and 3 and 4. And so not only will it start to annoy you, but it'll also start to bog down the entire network. So straight up multicasting, IT guys hate it because it's very taxing to the network. AVB is kind of a hybrid of it. It is a multicast stream, but it only sends to the listeners who have requested that stream. So if you don't want to subscribe to Michael Hooper and his email about bobbleheads, then I'm not going to send it to you. But I basically query all of the AVB devices on the network and say, hey, who wants to get an email about bobbleheads real fast? And then everybody that raised their hand, okay, you're all on CC, go. And I send it out to you guys.
Excellent. Very cool. Very cool. So another one that we had is how the AVB bandwidth is managed. How a customer can expect to, because using your analogy, everyone wants that. You poll, and now you're going to be sending all this out. A customer needs to understand if these devices, these microphones, these amplifiers, these DSPs are residing on their network, what's that mean to them?
So IT guys are very scared of their network and bandwidth that
Protective.
they don't have.
They're not scared.
Scared.
They're just,
I should
like,
say protective. They are very protective of their bandwidth. They don't want to relinquish control of any of it to anybody. So AVB, what we're doing here is we use MSRP, multiple stream reservation protocol, and what that is doing is essentially, is that one of them?
Stream reservation.
All right, there we go.
It's encapsulated.
Okay.
you just gave that one away. I missed it.
I'm just so excited. I've only got one more, so don't look at my paper, Clayton. I see what you're doing over there.
Are you leading the conversation to win?
I would not do that.
Of course not. So AVB, in a nutshell, reserves 75% of its stream for media traffic and the other 25% for whatever else. can take that
Like
reserve.
control traffic?
Yeah, for a control or whatever else it might be. We're not saying that 75%.
Can I pause you right there? This is a bingo.
Oh my gosh.
Show it to
I
the
threw
camera.
that pitch out there for you, Robert. Did you
Yeah,
hear
so
that?
much.
that was a softball if I
okay.
ever saw it.
I'll be here all day. Look
you
at
go.
look at the award, a Biamp hat. You don't even know if it's Biamp. It's just a red dot.
Red dot.
Actually matches
That's
our
it.
company colors
Red
too.
dot.
Perfect.
My hair. I'm having a good hair day, so I'm not gonna put it on right now. That's okay.
We're gonna keep playing for like
Y'all should see who comes in
First loser, right?
second, third, and fourth.
Second, third, fourth.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
Either
It was
way.
your idea for the game.
Technically, we didn't
You know
give
what,
credit.
Robert? I already have one of those hats, so it's okay.
Okay. Damn.
all right.
Solid
It's
burn.
good.
we
totally
didn't
good.
actually give credit to the author of the bingo game.
I know. It was Mr. Hooper. The bingo game was fantastic. I don't know that the viewers and listeners are going to be
don't
like,
care.
why do they keep getting distracted? Why do they keep looking down and marking off their paper? All right, sorry,
We're
go
still
ahead.
playing here.
I
So
am.
back to bandwidth. The thing is, we can reserve up to 75% of the stream. It's not automatically reserved for AVB. The whole stream is open for anything. But whenever AVB traffic comes in, it's prioritized much higher than anything else, which deals with traffic shaping across the network. So with AVB, you're looking at switches that basically have QoS that can prioritize every little packet into a hierarchy of, well, this is more important, and this is more important, and this is more important. And then after it's basically queued everything up, then it sends that data packet out to the network. And it's doing this so fast. Like, we don't realize how fast this is
Yeah.
actually happening. But the low priority traffic is the only thing that if it gets overloaded or flooded, then that's going to get dropped. So the AVB traffic is at the highest priority. It's never going to get dropped. So your media is never going to blip out across your network. If you run out of bandwidth, so you're already totally like at the max, what happens in AVB is whenever I send out that query of, hey, who wants this stream? I also am sending out, who wants this stream? By the way, it's this big. This is the package. And the listener will send back, I would like that stream, but I can't accept a package that big. I can only accept this. And so that's how it tunnels through the network to figure out how it's going to get from point A to point B. And by doing that, we're effectively not able to crash your network. So the stream, we can't just overload your network by putting too much media on it. We're going to simply say, okay, Robert, that last thing that you wanted to send, nobody can accept it because the network is already full. So you just hang on. And everything else on the network is going to operate just as it normally would. But in other protocols or, I guess, media over the network, where it's just best effort delivery, you don't understand who is on the network and how much bandwidth is already being consumed. You're just throwing your emails out there too, not realizing that nobody's actually getting them and nobody's reading them because we're all at maximum capacity. We can't
Gotcha.
read your email.
So just staying on the topic of AVB, since they are, we're talking about network, we're talking about devices on a network. If a customer wants to and has accepted the AVB solution from us, and let's say that includes multiple DSPs, multiple microphones, multiple speakers, multiple amplifiers, and they want to stand this up on their network, are there particular style switches, network switches that are required
I
for
have to stop the
AVB?
conversation for a moment.
Oh,
my gosh.
Second
Yep,
place.
just-
Second place. If you're not first, you're last.
It only took us 30 minutes to get 2 winners,
It's
and
pretty
both
good.
times we've interrupted Hooper in the process.
I'm impressed. I think a lot of credit, like you said, goes to the person that made it. Because had he not made it in such a way to lead the conversation, he had no idea we were going to have the conversation to cover all these words. I'm so excited. Sorry.
I'll get you a hat too, Clayton.
Okay.
I don't know
So-
if you can wear it, but
Yeah.
So
He can
network
wear it when he's
switches,
riding his bike.
network switches requirements for AVB.
yes. So there is a requirement for AVB in network switches. It has to have the ability to prioritize that traffic, like I said, and not every switch is smart enough to do this. So there are
Let's be fair. Very few switches have this.
there's approximately 25 from Cisco, a smaller number from Netgear, PackEdge, Control4, Motu, PreSonus, but I would be remiss if I didn't plug our own. We have a device called Tessera Connect now, which is a small AVB PoE switch for connecting Tessera devices together, thus Tessera Connect. But yes, think of it like this. 10 years ago, maybe longer, VLANing switches. That was something that you had to ask for. You had to say, will this switch be able to VLAN? And now you wouldn't think of a switch that couldn't VLAN as anything that you would actually buy, because it's just inherent to the standards that we're operating under nowadays. So it is something that will eventually just become part of what you buy. Your switch is totally capable of this. And right now, some companies charge you a license to upgrade the firmware to make it AVB compatible. Some already have it built in. I will say, I personally like the switch from Pack Edge, the S3L. It's cost efficient, and it does everything that we need it to do at a really great point. And for AV guys, I like this the best. The ports are on the back. It's
A little bit cleaner.
You wouldn't believe how much that just makes a big difference to me. Whenever I have small traveling racks and the racks are full of equipment, I don't have to have one RU just dedicated for passing cables through to the front side, or I don't have to install the switch on the back, because sometimes these are very short racks and they don't come with back rails.
So you mentioned something there in the last statement about licensing. We've seen a couple of reports come out about licensing fees for AVB. Can you touch upon where that's applicable? The customers, is it a customer cost? Is it coming through a pro AV dealer? How does that work?
So if you're using Extreme Network switches or Netgear switches, you can't simply just buy an Extreme Network switch off of the shelf and expect it to work. It has to have a license for AVB traffic. That's not the case with every switch out there. I know for a fact that the switches I try to recommend, they don't include that. The Mo2 switch is a very small, cost-efficient switch that it's just an AVB switch. I mean, that's the model number, AVB switch. So some of them are a lot easier than others, but right now there are a few licenses that you have to pay.
They're attempting to recover their R&D costs to add AVB functionality, and it's probably not a primary seller for them. So rather than penalize the entire marketplace for the few, they're keeping their cost points efficient by doing it from a licensing model. Me personally, I'm not a fan of the licensing model, because then I have to remember to
Keep up with it.
Or buy the license.
I believe it's just a one-time purchase for all of these.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Yeah.
So it's a one-time purchase.
It's not recurring.
It's per switch. It's not necessarily per port.
Yes, I believe it's per switch.
Okay. So is there a location, maybe on Biamp's website or somewhere else that you know of? I'm not trying to put you totally on the spot. Where we can find switches that are recommended by Biamp for AVB.
So if you Google AVB switch, the very first link that pops up is going to be a link to our support website that is just a list of switch manufacturers and the models that they make that are AVB.
That's great.
How up to date is that? Last I looked, it wasn't very up to date.
The applications engineers try to keep that fairly up to date. So you should see updates on that list probably about once a quarter.
Okay.
But then again, keep in mind, just because I say it's an AVB switch does not necessarily mean that it has the Avenue Alliance stamp of certification on there.
Sure.
For example, that Mo2 switch that is model number AVB switch, that's actually not an Avenue Alliance certified device. So you can use it. We use it quite often in smaller deployments. But if something goes wrong, there is no stamp of approval that this is an interoperability standard or this piece has passed testing. And I believe that Mo2, and I don't want to say anything bad about Mo2, great company, love their products.
Well, we've used their product a number of times.
I don't think that they really cared that, they were getting their switches out in Biamp deployments. They made a switch so that all of their devices could talk to each other. And that's what they were concerned with. And they were also concerned with time synchronicity and things like that, which are very important to AVB.
Yeah, outside of the AVB switch from Mo2, I'm not very familiar with Mo2 as a company. Anyway, I know that they're not a switch manufacturer
Make
by trade.
audio interfaces primarily for recording that are large in the
Okay.
recording industry. Stands for Mark of the Unicorn is where that comes from. And so
Okay.
in earlier days of digital audio,
Wait,
when there were
what? Why isn't Mark of the Unicorn on this list?
It totally should be on there. And I will say, I only learned that maybe a year and a half ago, and then somebody told me that that's what Motu stood for, and I was like, no, you're
they
wrong. You
were
have
one of the first
absolutely
companies
no
to
idea
really
what you're
translate a lot of digital audio types of formats that were being used back in the late 80s, early 90s at the dawn of time when Pro Tools ran the recording studio. I know this because I worked in a studio and
Yeah.
we used Pro Tools and we had Motu interfaces. And
Very cool.
Anyway,
Uh-oh,
There you go.
third place has
By
been
the
awarded.
way, you did ask me about ports, so
yeah.
sorry, Corey.
So I think what we've heard so far with AVB is that there's a lot of education to be had. I mean, I don't think that a lot of customers understand this, but we're here to guide you through it. There's a lot to think about around it. And what I'm hearing Mr. Hooper say is that it's going to become more and more of a standard, not necessarily AVB, but how the traffic is done, what switches are acceptable to have that style of traffic. So what I'd like to do is kind of get the opposite side of that coin with Dante and kind of ask the same questions. Can you tell us, Clayton, if Dante is a unicast or multicast style of communication?
So it's Unicast by default. But there's a software application that Audinate released called Dante Controller, which allows users to select the routes, whatever, between transmitters and receivers. So if you only select what they call a subscription in Dante Controller, this transmitter only goes to this receiver, that's going to be unicast traffic. The moment I select multiple receivers for a single transmitter, it creates a multicast stream. It's kind of like what Michael was talking about with the email example, which was really, really good. And I'm probably going to borrow that before you try to license it or
means.
patent it.
So
But
what you're describing is much like
there's a guy in the
subscribing-
mailroom
yeah,
who's
subscribing to a
sorting,
newsletter.
He's deciding who's going to get these subscriptions, and that's how Dante manages bandwidth. It only creates multicast traffic if it needs to. Obviously, if something only needs to go to one place, it's a unicast stream, and manages it that way. Latency is very low on the Dante network, but that is one thing. There you go, Corey. I'm trying,
I'm
man.
still
trying
I'm
for ya.
still in it.
Wow.
I've got like 10 minutes to work all the rest of these words in.
We're gonna get them.
But latency can suffer when bandwidth is maximized in Dante when you have a lot of channels and a lot of multicast traffic. So it'll adjust. You can set latency specific to certain devices on the network, all the way down to, I think it's 150 microseconds, up to about 1 millisecond. And it will adjust that latency as necessary. And keep in mind, and this is one of the questions I have for Michael, just because I've never actually known, but Dante is 512 bidirectional channels of audio. That's its capacity. Most Dante networks are not carrying 512 bidirectional channels, so they're not going to approach a lot of that maximum bandwidth. What is the AVB, or is there actually a maximum to AVB?
It really
let's
is
stay at the
bandwidth
standard sample
dependent.
resolution too. Let's not talk about like some people that try to deploy at different resolutions, but bandwidth dependent.
It's going to depend on your network and your
Gotcha.
bandwidth. So one of the things that AVB really came out and said was, we're not going to be limited by a hard number.
Yeah.
We want to have
Explains why I've never seen one.
as many as possible.
Googled it.
So yeah, you can Google it and you'll come up with some numbers, but it's also going to be specific to the bandwidth, the actual media that's being transported.
I was gonna say, AVB has a video component, so
yeah,
Right.
we're
Which
talking-
Dante
whereas you
has
could,
not.
you could. I mean,
But it now could,
right.
with this new card that they're selling to manufacturers. We'll see how long it takes to get out into the market. But so
Let me wrap my head around what you said about, did you say 512?
bidirectional channels.
So is
Okay.
there a chipset that can send and receive 512? Or
There
is
is
that
not.
that's the protocol
network maximum
limitation? Okay.
limitation for Dante. No, the largest chipset is the Brooklyn 2 chipset that they manufacture. It's typically shown as being 64 channels bidirectional at a standard 48 kilohertz sampling rate. However, Dante is really more about flows than channels, which is what I think AVB calls streams. So cards are, I'm trying, man, trying. We didn't put flows on the bingo card, but a flow is a transmission of audio packets that can contain up to 4 channels of audio. Doesn't have to have 4 channels of audio, but it can. And really the chipset limitation is based on the number of flows that they can do per chipset. So the Brooklyn 2 is capable of 32 by 32 flows. So, getting up to that 512 channel count, you do have to add additional cards into the ecosystem. You rarely would have a device that would have that many transmit or receive flows,
Sounds like a fun design, though.
Yeah. Another thing about Dante that is advantageous for it and why a lot of people choose to use it, and not just in comparison to AVB, I'm just talking about as a protocol by itself, it's layer 3 protocol, which means it can transverse switches and routers on a network. So it can work on a wide area network. And it
So
can
it's
actually,
not VLAN dependent. It doesn't have to live within one particular subnet.
the traffic talking to each other needs to be within one specific subnet. If it's in the same domain, I mean, there's a product or a function of Dante now called Domain Manager,
Okay.
which allows Dante to traverse subnets over a network. It does require some setup on the network.
We've only
Obviously,
ever-
he talked about QoS, quality of
Right.
service. PTP values have to be in place. But QoS is important for any kind of media over IP. I mean, even VoIP settings are dependent upon QoS.
Right. We've only ever deployed it into single VLAN environments purposefully. And typically, whether it's AVB or Dante or other video products that we've used, we're kind of segmenting that traffic into a particular VLAN so that it can be managed kind of on its own little little island, and it doesn't exclude it from having access to the internet or other devices on other subnets. But those devices don't communicate or multicast or unicast traffic outside of that particular VLAN. That's probably been the thing that Robert and I and the other design engineers and sales folks have the hardest time explaining to network engineers when it comes to video or audio traffic over their network, is why it can't translate between subnets at all or reliably. And really it comes down to further explaining to them how multicast traffic and unicast traffic work. It's not a limitation of the product so much as it is the type of traffic and the bandwidth involved and network flooding and a whole other host of issues. But when you made that comment earlier, it made me think that there is a method to doing that. It sounds like they're working on that.
Yeah, they've launched Dante Domain Manager. Its intention is for large venues, large campuses. Think of a house of worship that's got sanctuary, overflow rooms, youth rooms. They want audio to pass in between there and the broadcast studio. Or a large performing arts center that has multiple stages. They want to pass audio around. A really good example is at the University of North Texas. They have a couple of recording studios there, and of course it's a huge music school, and there's tons of performance venues out there. They're all tied together over a Dante network to get everything from anywhere back to any of the 3 recording studios they use. So they record every student recital performance there, and Dante is done over the wide area network of the campus over fiber. Now,
Well,
one of the things that people say real quick about Dante is that it's plug and play, and to make sure that was on there.
I'm done.
I still don't
I don't
think
know if
that-
we need to remind the viewers.
And so,
I won already.
in like the networks
I
that you're-
still, by the way, have not won, and Clayton has been gracious enough to give me, I think, 3 or 4 words.
Ryan, I can't
in his
see your
last-
paper from
I
over
feel
there.
like that we're at a convergence of conversation.
Yeah, that word is on there, and that certainly makes me 4th place loser. But explain, and I'm sorry,
it's
explain to
fine.
me how convergence ended up on the bingo sheet.
This was late last night.
He needed one more word.
He was like, I have this last empty square.
I am looking over at your sheet too, and I see that you've got 4K on here, and I don't think anybody else had 4K. And I took that off of everybody else's because I was like, well, we're not going to talk about video.
I want to point
So
out.
I think that you might have.
I want to point out that this bingo card was in front of me when I sat down.
Ooh.
It was not randomly selected from a
I think Corey's mind just changed from being, hey, I really like AVB to I really like Dante.
So Clayton, we were talking about AVB over here, or Dante over here.
So Clayton, another question like we asked Mr. Hooper, are there particular network switches that are required for Dante communication?
Well, they need to be gigabit at minimum and managed, although you can run Dante on fast Ethernet switches, which are 10100 switches, which is something that CobraNet could only run on. It couldn't exceed 10100. Although it's hard to find 10100 switches out there really anymore, so it doesn't really matter. But that's, I think, 32 channels of less or some certain number of flows less you can do on 10100. But as long as it's gigabit managed, need to be able to turn off the green Ethernet mode, where the switch port goes into sleep mode, essentially.
Yeah.
That's probably typical of, I'm sure, the AVB switches too. Audio traffic that's being clocked doesn't like the port to go to sleep. Anyway, there's a couple settings you have to have on there. As long as the switch can do that, then it can be Dante compatible. They used to have a blacklist of switches on their website, which I think they still do, although it's really, really out of date. It's a couple years old. Basically now, Audinate just says these are the requirements.
Make sure on your own that
That's right. Because there's too many out there.
Right.
Which is one of the other things that they sell as the platform, is that the switches are inexpensive and easy to find.
I can't think of a layer 2 or a layer 3 switch made today, manufactured right now, that wouldn't support Dante.
There's not many. I've heard of a few that have popped up over and over, that people have tried to use. There's a series of Netgears, the ProSafe series.
Okay.
That was, not really
today still.
That was a couple years ago.
Oh.
I think those are been phased out and replaced by something else. But that's another thing that Dante sells for the platform. Not just it discovers everything on the network easily. It's plug and play, which in the sense of one switch, like what you're talking about deploying, it is relatively plug and play. Now, if I'm going up to the example of the University of North Texas, where I'm tying all these rooms together over a wide area network over fiber, that's not quite so plug and play. That takes some setup on the network side to do it. But
I think the thing, and this has just kind of come to me now, with Dante being a chipset and soon to be software and licensed through Audinate, every manufacturer that makes a product with Dante in it is handcuffed by that particular manufacturer. So if they stop improving that product, then it limits other manufacturers' abilities to continue to improve their product as well. Whereas if you're basing your products off of a particular standard, again, the development time is longer, R&D time is longer, but you kind of own that intellectual right, and you can continue to improve upon your
Which
product.
is what happened to Biamp with the audio product.
Exactly.
Essentially. Yeah.
So-
there's another protocol we haven't even brought up. I'm just going to throw it there real fast. It's called AES-67, AES-70, which is an open standard protocol, much like AVB, in fact, that you adhere to these IEEE standards. And Audinate, in order, I think, to not phase themselves out of the marketplace, the new chipsets are AES-67 compatible, so it can be turned on for users who are using that.
Well, that was going to be my question, is what is Audinate going to do to not become CobraNet?
That's interesting. I guess we'll see. I guess adding the video is one thing. There are some new products coming out that are 96 kilohertz with Audinate. So Allen and Heath has some what they're calling Super Dante cards that improve the resolution over the network without changing the bandwidth of the network. And that's, in live audio, performance audio, that sampling rate's a big deal for a lot of people. So we'll see. There are some updates coming there. I know that AVB's got some updates too. There's something called Milan. And
we could do a whole nother thing.
I know,
Yeah.
and which I have questions about, but we'll do that off air. And companies like L Acoustics and Meyer, high-end performance audio systems are part of this Milan. So both platforms are changing constantly,
Right.
and we'll see where they go with it.
To touch on that, like with the big audio manufacturers like L Acoustics, D&B, Meyer, I know that we have to wrap up soon, but I just wanted to
They're good. Take your time.
to mention the reason why we're seeing more of these big audio guys start adopting AVB and also joining the Milan committee, which is helping develop the standards for everybody's interoperability, it has to do with the way that AVB works with synchronicity and that across a network. So, and I'm not exactly sure how Dante handles this, so maybe you can correct me when I'm wrong, but let me tell you about AVB. Whenever I want to send a broadcast message out, and we are all going to broadcast the same message, if I were to write something down on a piece of paper and just send it across the network and say, okay, broadcast this, and I pass it to Corey, and he broadcast it and passed it to Robert, and Robert broadcast it and passed it to Clayton, it's not synchronized at all. It's going to be very, very just independent as far as the actual broadcaster. So if we were all a speaker, like one box of a line array system, that would not go well because you would have phasing and it wouldn't sound very good at all. So the next step would be, network sync. So have some sort of clock, right? So if I sent my message out and I said, okay, broadcast this at exactly 11 o'clock or whatever it might be, then I pass it over to Corey, and he says, okay, I got the message. I know exactly what time to broadcast it. He passes it along, and we're all looking at our wristwatches, and we all broadcast at 11 o'clock. We didn't actually synchronize together, so our 11 o'clocks might be closer in time, but not exact. Where AVB more or less sets itself apart is having the network synchronicity of all the devices together use a grandmaster, which I know that Dante does as well, but it's not dependent upon the end devices. It's actually dependent on network time. So your network time, which is what's holding everything together from the switches, not just the end devices, is saying, okay, everybody's going to broadcast at 11 o'clock, and we're using this clock here that we can all see as the grandmaster clock, and that's how we're more or less broadcasting it. Exactly.
That type of functionality has been present in the server world for a long time. I mean, they're using that. We're using that here for all of our servers to continue communicating. They all run off of a synchronous clock. It's not that different. Hey, just a fact. All of our headphones is digital audio. Dante, in this case.
I got a question around that to kind of wrap things up. I want to know how long, I'm going to ask each of you, and I'll go with you first. Do you think that we're at a point in time where we can say that in X amount of years, gone are the days of having the Phoenixes on the back of mixers and the XLR connections, and how far away are we from, in your opinion, I mean, it's just a guess,
from the sunset of analog altogether?
Sunset of analog audio.
I think that there will always be a few small pieces that may have to have it for specialty interfaces. Let's say, I could be wrong.
Probably rental and staging, probably events and wired microphones here and there.
You think about connecting, you want to come in and just be able to plug in a device, a laptop or something, without having to log into some sort of future protocol or something. Exactly.
What?
There's HDMI cable, audio, something like that. But for the most part, I think we're not that far away from, everything from the microphone, the input transducer, to the loudspeaker, at some point being over the network. Now, loudspeakers that require a lot of power, that's going to be difficult. You're still going to have, speaker cables and output cables to handle, I think, higher power loads, because it's hard to do that over an Ethernet cable. But
I don't think we're that far off.
You're dancing around the answer.
Okay.
You got to give a number of months or years.
Sure. So I'm going to say, obviously within a decade, that would be conservative.
Okay.
And
what do you think?
Be, half that time.
I'm going to say November 18, 2024.
Corey's writing it down.
I know.
I'm going to put that in my calendar.
This is the closest without going over, right?
We need to make sure that we have another podcast scheduled for that.
Got it.
That's the day. That's the day. And where I see things going is simply this. I represent a DSP manufacturer. DSP's on there.
I've given up.
Right now, it seems like, yes, everything plugs into the DSP. That's the beating heart of your system. Well, it's still going to be the beating heart of your system, whether or not it's a software that you subscribe to that lives on a server somewhere in an IDF closet, and your microphones simply just plug into the network and your speakers plug into the network. For example, like Biamp, we're almost already there. We've got our DSP that is located in the IDF closet somewhere else. Well, as long as you have an ABB network capability, then plug your microphones into the network with a Cat5 cable. Plug your speakers or amplifiers into the network with a Cat5 cable, and just point them at each other. You don't necessarily need anything else. Plug the VoIP into the network, or plug the network into the DSP or the server, whatever it might be. Like, everything is kind of just migrating that way, and we're getting closer and closer. With every infocom, we're just getting closer and closer to, there's no more like Phoenix connectors.
Yeah.
There's no more captive screws going into this, going to that. It's all just...
I was in a meeting yesterday and trying to talk to a customer that is really just, and not to their own fault. It's just they've gotten accustomed to things, and it's kind of hard for them to understand that this is, forcefully the way that things are going. And I use an analogy of a printer. You remember a printer 20 to 25 years ago? That would physically interface with the computer that you are printing from. There would be a USB connection, or there would even be some type of big, Amphenol multi-tooth connector. And then somebody said, there's no way that we're going to be able to have a printer on the network. It's just not going to work. It's kind of the same thing. If you really think about it, it's just going to be that way because it's more efficient. And I think it's going to just offer up a lot more ability for expansion for customers. So that's just about all the time we have for today. We really appreciate you guys coming on. We had a great time. I love the bingo.
Hang on, we got one more thing we got to cover.
We have one more thing.
We got one more thing. It's National Joke Day. And so you guys are currently being put on the spot. Who wants to go first to tell their best G-rated joke?
I think the rookie should go first.
Yeah, good call. Rook.
All right. Why don't seagulls fly over the bay?
Why?
Because then they'd be bagels, and bagels can't fly.
Nice.
It's not laugh-worthy, but it's certainly smirk-worthy.
I love to laugh, so it's going to be...
This is a competition. I don't know if you guys picked up on that. Oh. There will be a clear winner.
The clear winner. All jokes just left my head, so I always resort to musician jokes in that point. So I was going to say, what do you call a drummer without a girlfriend?
What?
A drummer?
Homeless. Assuming, anyway.
I like it.
All right.
I like it.
On two, who do you select? 1, 2. Can't be a draw.
That's a draw. Well, are you not going to tell a joke too?
No, I'm not going to tell a joke.
Oh, I'm going to tell a joke.
I'm the host.
Yeah, what do you got?
Let me go through my repertoire.
It can't be a dad. It can't be a dad joke.
That's all I know. I've got 3 girls. All right, here's one. Around girls going back to school. Why didn't the antelope want to go to school? Because there are too many cheetahs. Okay, well, tough crowd.
I know who is not the winner. I might have come in last on bingo, but I could not tell a joke and still win.
Thank you so much for viewing and listening. We hope you learned a little bit about the different technologies out there for audio communication and algorithms, and I hope that you understand that this is the way the future is going. We'd love to talk to you more about it, understand how to help build your best audio environment. And if you'd like to hear more about these subjects or anything else related to the podcast, please email us at info@taurustechinc.com. Again, thank you, Mr. Hooper. Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Thanks for having us.
For myself and Corey Church, y'all have a great day.